Okay, here we are with homework 4.06, the last homework of the unit. So this is kind of what we're going to use to get ready for our test. Alright, the first one is fill in the chart for the following inequality. All real numbers less than or equal to -3. And we're going to do it as an inequality, as a graph, using set builder, and using interval. So this is so that you can see all of the different forms that are available for essentially what's the same problem. So if we take a look at this, all real numbers less than or equal to. So this all real numbers part is basically our code for our x less than or equal to. Okay, we're going to have our less than or equal to sign, and then the -3 is just a -3. So for the first one, when we're writing the inequality, we don't need anything special. That would just be x is less than or equal to -3. Right? So when we make our graph, we're just going to make a quick sketch here. I'm going to put a -3, put a 0, put a +3. And this is where you have to know the difference between less than or equal to and just less than. When it's less than or equal to, we need the shaded circle. So we're going to make a shaded circle on -3. And then because it's less than, we're going to go off to the left because those are all the numbers that are less than -3. Okay? Set builder is the more formal notation. So it's going to be exactly like this. We just have to add a few pieces. So we're going to start with a brace. Then we do x colon, which is x such that, and then we just write this right here comes down. Alright, so it's pretty much exactly the same. It's just got this little extra notation that we need to have when we're doing this. Okay. Then last but not least is interval notation. Alright, and the thing to remember with interval notation is that when you have a less than or equal to, that's a bracket. If you have just a less than, that's a parenthesis. And the same goes true for greater thans. When there's the equal sign underneath, you need a bracket. When there's no equal sign, you need a parenthesis. And then also, infinities always go next to parentheses. Alright, so let's take a look at what we have here. If we take a look at our graph, I think the graphs are the easiest thing to use when you're trying to do interval notation. We can see that the smallest number that we have on our graph is way down here, which is what we call negative infinity, and then the largest number is a -3. So the smaller number always goes on the left, which is negative infinity. The larger number always goes on the right, which is -3. Now, as we just said earlier, infinities always go next to parentheses, and then because we have a shaded circle, that's going to be a bracket. Okay. So here you're seeing kind of 4 different ways to demonstrate the same inequality. All right, let's take a look at number 1. So number 1 here is just a regular, solve an inequality in graph. So we got to go through our steps. So we'll start by distributing. We get 4 is less than or equal to -2x minus 6. Alright, so next we'll add 6 to both sides. 4 plus 6 is 10, is less than or equal to -2x. After this, we'll divide by -2, divide by -2. Now, here's where you have to be careful. When you are dividing by a negative and you're dealing with inequalities, this symbol has to flip. So it's going to go from being a less than or equal to a -5 is greater than or equal to x. Now you could be done here, but I think this is harder to graph. It's harder to think about -5 is greater than or equal to x than it is if we flip this around. So if we flip this around and say, alright, I'm going to put the x on the left-hand side, and then because it was next to the closed or the less than side, I'm going to keep it next to that side, so I've got to flip that symbol again. I think this is easier to graph because now we can say it and it's x is less than or equal to -5, and I think for most people that's just an easier thing to wrap their heads around. So if we go up to the graph here, let's put a -5 here, -4, -3, -2, -1. We'll put a 0 here. And then we'll put a 4 here because we're out of lines. All right. So we've got the equal sign underneath. Right here, we've got the equal sign underneath. So that's going to tell us we need a shaded circle on the -5. And then again, since x is less than or equal to -5, that's going to be an arrow off to the left. Those are all the numbers that are less than -5. Okay, let's take it to the back. Okay, 2 here is a compound inequality. So it's basically like we're solving 2 problems at once. So the way I like to do this is kind of cover the left-hand side and just say, all right, if this was my problem, what would I do? Well, I'd need to get rid of that 2. So if I subtract 2, I subtract 2. The only thing I need to remember is if I did it here and here, I also bring it over here and do it here. Okay? So then I get 4 is less than 4x, which is less than or equal to 12. Same idea. All right, to solve this, I would divide by 4. So let's do the same thing, only do it in all 3 places. So at the end, we're going to end up with 1 is less than x, which is less than or equal to 3. Okay. So we'll go up here, we'll make our graph. There's 0, there's 1, there's 2, there's 3, there's -1, there's -2, there's -3. And then if we look at what we have to write here, it is 1 is less than x, which is less than or equal to 3. So on the 1, we're going to need an open circle because there's no equal sign here. So let's put an open circle on the 1. On the 3, we're going to need a closed circle because we do have the equal sign. And then these are usually pretty easy to graph because all you have to do is sort of connect the 2 points that you made. So we don't have to really worry about which direction the arrows are going. The x is in the middle, and our line is going to go in the middle of those 2 points that we just made. Okay, so that would be the answer to number 2. Number 3, it says -4x minus 1 is greater than -9, or 7x plus 5 is greater than 40. Bad news. The or doesn't mean you just get to pick which one you got to solve. We're just going to do one after the other. So it's just like 2 problems in one. All right, so -4x minus 1 is greater than 9. We'll start by solving the one on the left. We end up with -4x is greater than -8. Divide both sides by -4. And then because we're dividing by a negative, this has to flip around and we get x is less than 2. Okay. Now all we do is we go over and we do the second problem. So we're going to subtract 5, 7x is greater than 35. Divide by 7, divide by 7. X is greater than 5. So our final answer would be x is less than 2 or x is greater than 5. All right, so let's take that up here so that we can graph it. All right, so put the 0 here, we'll put the 2 here, 3, 4, put the 5 here, maybe put a -2 down there. All right, so if we look at these, x less than 2, x greater than 5, neither of these have an equal sign underneath them, so in both cases we're going to be using the open circle. So let's put an open circle on the 2, put an open circle on the 5. And then if we look at these, x is less than 2, so that's going to be down and to the left because we're smaller than 2. And then we have x is greater than 5, so that's going to be off to the right. And that's what you should expect for these OR problems. When you have an OR problem, you're usually going to end up with your arrows going in opposite directions. If they're not going in opposite directions, you probably want to go back and look to see if you made a mistake somewhere. Okay? All right, number 4. Which is a solution to 3x plus 4 is greater than 25. All right, so this is just solving an inequality, but it's a multiple choice question. So let's do the work over here and then see what we end up with. 3x plus 4 is greater than 25. So subtract 4 from both sides. 3x is greater than 21. Divide both sides by 3. X is greater than 7. All right, so when you're doing one of these, the answer that a lot of students want to pick is 3. However, that's the trap. 3 is not a solution to this inequality. All right, if we think about the graph here, all right, 0, 7, -7. There's no equal sign here. So this is an open circle on the 7 and then going off to the right. We've talked about it. The open circle means that it is not part of your solution set. 7 is not greater than 7, so it is not your answer here. The only answer choice here that's actually greater than 7 is choice 1, which is 8 here. So you just want to be careful for these, because if there's no equal sign under it, you have to really pay attention to which answer you're circling. Okay. 5. Which example of set builder notation includes 4 and 5 in its solution set? Okay, so we're basically looking for which one has 4 and 5 kind of shaded in if we were to make graphs, because that's kind of the best approach to these, is just make graphs, quick graphs for each of these problems. Okay, so on this one, there's 4, there's 5. They're both open circles because there's no equal sign. Oh, that one's not going to work. Neither 4 or 5 are shaded in. All right, let's go down here. All right, again, we'll have the 4, we'll have the 5. The 4 is going to be shaded in, but the 5 is not going to be shaded in because there's no equal sign there. So again, we're getting closer. We've got one of them there, but we don't have both of them. All right, so let's go over here, make a little graph for this one. 3, 4, and 5, because this time we're going from 3, 4, and 5. The 3 is an open circle. The 5 is an open circle, and then our shading goes in between those two. So this one we have 4 because it's part of our shaded line, but we're still missing 5 because it's an open circle. All right, let's take a look at number 2 here. Hopefully this is going to be it because the other 3 didn't work. All right, so we'll make our little line here. This is 3, this is 4, this is 5. 3 is going to be an open circle. 5 is going to be a shaded circle, and then we're going to connect these 2 points. So let's see how we're doing here. 3 is not shaded in, but we don't care about 3, so that's fine. 4 is shaded in because it's underneath the line. 5 is also shaded in because we had an equal sign there. So this is going to be our answer. This is the one that includes both 4 and 5. So we can pick this one right here. All right. That's the end of the homework. I hope this was helpful, and hopefully it'll get you ready for the test that's coming up. All right, have a good day.